Today we are talking about different books from different genres, but that have a few elements in common. And that would be female identity mostly, but also things related to it like cultural critique and societal expectations. So let's get to it. Hello and welcome to Kai's Quarters, my quarters. So, like I said, today we will be talking about 7 specific books that belong to different genres. Some are Gothic and horror, some other are classics. I think most, if not all, are written by women. And they talk about the female experience, basically, the cultural pressure of a certain periods of time that we will be discussing. And they all have psychological depth, but some of them are dark, some of them are gothic, some of them explore the surreal, and we have both novellas and novels of all sizes. So I wanted to start with almost a modern classic, to be honest, that belongs to the thriller genre, and that would be Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. This is a psychological thriller, and it is about the disappearance of a woman in her 30s or so, and the media and social media frenzy that revolves around it. Of course, her disappearance puts her husband under police investigation, and so we follow the perspective of this man, Nick, but also the perspective of the woman that disappears, Amy, because she has left some entries from her diary that they were able to recover because that diary had been burned. And they are not favorable for her husband, Nick. Through both his and her perspective, we follow the tale of a toxic marriage that has been built on lies and facades because they try to perceive the other person as this ideal companion, almost projecting the ideal qualities that a companion should have and that they would like their companion to have. But they also project themselves to the other person as someone they are not, someone too ideal. The book has this incredible discussion about the cool girl idea, and through Amy, we see that whether her husband did her or not, she was trapped in this marriage in which she couldn't complain too much because cool girls wouldn't complain. She had to always look perfect, but in this casual way, and have to really take care of herself a lot, but not talk about her taking care of herself, because that would be too shallow. And in the end, she even moved with Nick to Nick's childhood town, and that really isolated her, and that's where more serious problems in the marriage started to begin. Because no matter how hard she tries, things start to not work out the way she really wants to. So you can expect a story about sinister inner lives with a lot of twists and turns that start to unravel the story piece by piece, and that it dive into gender roles with one of the most famous and honestly just one of the best female characters there are, especially in the thriller genre. So next we will be talking about one of the best horror novellas that I have read, and I read it this year, and that is Come Closer by Sara Gran. Come Closer is the story of Amanda, a young girl that seems to have a normal life. She has a job as an architect, she has a boyfriend, she has her friends, until suddenly she slowly but progressively starts to be possessed by a demon, a female demon. Her behavior starts to become more violent. She has these hours and increasingly more time in which she does not remember what happened. And the lines between mental health and supernatural forces begins to blur. However, this demon seems to also dare to do things that Amanda never dared to do. She talks back to people who deserve it, to people at her job. She goes out to have fun for longer, and she also discusses things with her husband that she didn't dare to discuss previously. Things that, again, have to do with gender roles, because she is expected to take care of a lot of things in the house, and just not things that have to do with herself, but also with her partner. And so she starts to loosen up, but also lose control over her body, her mind. And I think it talks about repression and desire and identity, but it does so in such an uncanny, eerie, and horrifying way. There were some moments that I could visualize so well, and I hated myself for it because it was so gory, but not too gory though, but still it was so unsettling. And honestly, it would be a great movie because again, it's very visual. The pacing is wonderful because it is this crescendo into madness and violence and self-destruction in a way. The character is also very likable, so whatever happens to her, you root for her, you care for her, with her strength and her weaknesses. I always have trouble with the art display in the background, and it is so annoying. Let's see if it is fixed. So we have discussed two books with women with sinister inner lives, but now it is time to talk about something very different. And that is a forgotten classic, a forgotten book that was written in the early 20th century, and that would be Vera by Elizabeth von Arnim. It was written in 1921, and that makes it so that it was written before Rebecca by Daphne de Maurier. So listen to the plot. It is about a naive young woman that marries very quickly a man after just meeting him that is a widower. And when she moves to his house, she finds that the sort of presence of his first wife still lingers in the house. This first woman was called Vera, so the title is like Rebecca, about the first woman, not the protagonist of the book. And the thing is, Vera had fallen from a balcony in the same house in which the protagonist now lives. And yet she is forced to visit the same locations in which Vera used to reside, and even use the same things that she used to use and sleep in the same room. The husband doesn't seem to care. He doesn't seem to have that emotional intelligence and compassion and understanding of her situation. And this is because from the start, we are made very clear that this man is a narcissist. He is very controlling, and we from the outside can tell that she is into a marriage of psychological abuse. And again, this was written in the 1920s. And what's sad is that the author based this book on her own experience with, I think, her first marriage. So we seem to be the only person aware of all the signs of psychological abuse, and that is that the man is very quickly to marry her, and he doesn't care about the protagonist's personal affairs, personal life, personal desires, and he even isolates her from everything and everyone she knows. And this is portrayed in a very, very realistic way. He's not this mustache twirling type of villain, you know? Instead, he's portrayed as a man that is almost childlike and wants to have a wife that almost serves as a mother, and is very jealous of her ever doing anything that doesn't have anything to do with him. He can't conceive something like that. So with this, you can expect a book with no twist, no supernatural element. This is literary fiction, and you are doomed to know where this is going, but you cannot do anything about it other than read this incredible story about psychological abuse that was way ahead of its time. Right, now we won't stray from literary fiction, but this time around it's a bit more violent, because I will be recommending Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. The story is very provocative and very disturbing, and it is the story of Irina or Irina. I don't actually know how it's pronounced, but she's a photographer that takes photographs of ordinary men in explicit and sensual poses. So she's an artist, but she's also incredibly unlikable. So you better like to read about unlikable characters. It is not a problem for me personally, because I actually like to read about characters that are nothing like me and that hopefully I will never meet. But just know that you have to like unlikable characters. So Irina lives in London. She likes to take books. She has friends, but she hates them. She hates her job at an art gallery. She doesn't like any type of people. She's very pretentious. And yet she desires for something that is very relatable, and that is the core of the story, is what I thought. And that is that she wants to be taken seriously at her job and in her personal life. As an artist, it is very hard for her to make a name for herself, and particularly as someone who asks men to pose for her, she is exposed to a lot of dangerous situations that take a toll on her. So the thing is, like the protagonist of Come Closer, she starts to become more erratic, more violent, more eccentric, more self-destructive. And instead of being a person that is unfortunately exposed to dangerous situations, she takes control and it becomes the danger itself. But what's funny and sad is that even when she starts to become a danger, she is not seen that way by men. They cannot conceive that a woman could be someone dangerous to them. So I think Boy Parts is a very visceral and sometimes humoristic story about gender, power, exploitation, and even the voyeuristic nature of art. So the next recommendation is one that was very famous in the booktube and booktube circle back then, and that is Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno-García. In this, we follow Noemi, who is a glamorous socialite that has to move to a remote and rural manor because her cousin becomes very ill, so she starts to really worry about her. The thing is, her cousin had just married a man and moved to this manor with his family, and the man seemed to be very elusive in his answers about her well-being. This man belongs to a family that is not Mexican. They are English, I think. And they made their fortune by moving to Mexico and exploiting their minds, basically. We little by little learn more about the history of each of the members of this house and the bad influence they have had in this city and its members. So we have a story about anti-colonialism, but also about generational trauma. But we also have a feminist tale about female exploitation. There is this Gothic creeping sense of dread because you know that there is something wrong with this family, but you cannot put together exactly what it is. And of course, Noemi and her cousin are gaslighted. They are made to believe that they are just telling stories, that is not how they are. So you can expect a lot of social commentary, and don't forget the Gothic horror. Now for the second to last recommendation, we have another classic, this time the oldest classic in the list, and the only book written by a man. So that is another Gothic tale, and it is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. This Victorian classic was written in the 19th century, and I think it is considered one of the first mystery novels. And in it, a painter becomes the master of a young woman that lives in her house with her older sister. So he moves to this house, but on his way there, he encounters a mysterious woman dressed all in white. And when he arrives to the house, he realizes that that woman in white resembles a lot the young girl that he's supposed to teach. So he and the young girl fall in love, but the story starts when she is forced to marry an older man. And this is where the wonderful part of the book for me starts, because the book changes perspective, and instead of following Walter, we follow for a while the older sister of this young girl that has been forced to get married. And it is then that the story becomes incredibly claustrophobic, and we start to delve deep into, once again, psychological abuse and deceit. I was becoming so frustrated by the situation in which these very brave but defenseless women were having to face. And of course, there is the subplot about the woman in white that resembles the young woman, and that talks about social privilege. So, with the woman in white, we have another atemporal classic that was way ahead of its time. For the seventh and last recommendation, we have more of a modern classic written in the later half of the 20th century, and that would be The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This, like Vera, is a semi-autobiographical novel, and in it we follow the mental decline of a young girl called Esther, who seemingly has everything, and yet she starts to slowly sink into depression. Esther is a wealthy student, but she starts to suffocate under the expectations that I placed on her, especially in regards to motherhood and the lack of autonomy that sort of came with that. The thing is, Esther is very passionate about what she does. She writes, she likes art, but she knows that once she marries, she is expected to left all of that behind her. And that is a pressure that she cannot bear. It makes her crumble. We, of course, have the lyrical, wonderful prose of Sylvia Plath, who was mostly a poet. But we also deal with themes of identity in a very unexpectedly bold and explicit way, especially for the time, of course. She talks about sex, she talks about the value of being a virgin and how that doesn't sit right with her, and the measures she takes to not let that be a part of her. And we also see the state of mental asylums back then in the 1950s, specifically in America, but I think all around the world. They took girls in simply for not following social norms and social standards for women, and instead of working their way around that and trying to make them shine even under the circumstances, they took very drastic measures to simply make them, have the energy to face what is still a problem. One of the issues with the book, though, that I would like to warn about if you haven't read it, is that it's a bit racist, to be honest. In her mental decline, she makes this comparison between her face and the face of someone with Indian or black features, as if the symbolism there is that she is very ugly because she looks like an Indian or a black person. And there is one black character in the book that she treats very wrongly, in a way that is not justified. So there is something that doesn't sit right with the reader. Still, it is a cornerstone of white feminism, but it is still worth a read if you can somehow get past that, because it is very casual in its racism. And what that means is that there are just a few lines and a few words thrown in there that don't really affect the plot. But either way, those were my 7 recommendations. It is nighttime now, so let's end it there. And if you liked it, I talk about books. I especially like literary fiction, classics, horror, and weird lit. So you can expect a bit more of that. I also sometimes talk about art, video games, and film and theater. So if you like the sound of that, please consider subscribing and liking the video. And either way, I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much.